No, 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 no. Oh, God.
After massive Iranian missile strikes on Israel, combat alert was raised across all branches of the United States military. Air Force units, Marine Corps, fighter squadrons, all received the signal for combat readiness. The order went out immediately. Everything starts moving at once. Marines were transported from their barracks to the airfield by bus. Upon arrival, they began loading into a C-17 Globemaster III waiting on the tarmac with its rear ramp down. At the same time, cargo handlers were bringing in additional equipment on forklifts and flatbed carts. Portable generators, ammunition crates, communications gear, medical supplies. Everything was strapped down inside the cargo bay alongside the Marines. This aircraft was scheduled to make one stop at another military base to pick up more personnel and equipment before heading to the Middle East with a full load. At a nearby base, several more C-17s were already being loaded. Cargo handlers drove armored vehicles up the ramps, tactical buggies, armored trucks, MRAPs, and other combat vehicles. At a separate airfield, mechanics were preparing fighter jets that would be used over the coming days for sustained strikes on enemy military targets. Every aircraft got a full inspection, avionics checked, radar systems tested, wiring and electronics gone over panel by panel. Missiles and guided bombs were loaded onto the pylons. Engine covers were removed, intakes inspected, fuel systems checked. These fighters needed to be in perfect condition for continuous combat sorties over the next several days. Meanwhile, at another location on the base, soldiers were in the hangar going through their personal gear. They packed their duffel bags and rucksacks with everything they would need for an indefinite deployment. Uniforms, boots, hygiene kits, personal items, all packed and ready. These soldiers were not going on a short rotation. They were being sent to a military base in the Middle East for an unknown period of time. Nobody had a return date. At dusk, the order came to prepare for boarding. The soldiers formed up in columns outside the hangar and began marching toward their assigned aircraft. They walked up the ramps and took their seats inside the C-17s. Loadmasters did final checks on cargo and head counts. The ramps closed. One by one, the aircraft taxied to the runway and took off, disappearing into the darkening sky. Upon arrival in the Middle East, the C-17s landed and the unloading began immediately. Ramps dropped, soldiers filed out, vehicles were unchained and driven off, cargo pallets were pulled out by forklifts. Everything moved at an accelerated pace. These same aircraft would be turning around and flying back to make several more trips, picking up additional soldiers from other bases across the United States and delivering them here. For the soldiers stepping off the ramp and onto the tarmac, this base in the Middle East was now home for as long as the operation required. No set timeline, no return date on the calendar. They grabbed their bags, followed the directions from base personnel, and headed toward their assigned quarters. The buildup was underway, and more flights were already inbound. On the airfield, the maintenance crews work around the clock, preparing fighters for combat sorties. The aircraft are parked in rows on the apron, some under open sky, some pulled into hardened shelters. Fuel trucks pull up alongside each aircraft. A mechanic connects the single-point refueling nozzle to the port on the fuselage and starts pumping JP-8 kerosene into the tanks. The fuel flow is monitored on the truck's gauge panel. Once the tanks read full, the hose is disconnected, the cap is sealed, and the truck moves to the next jet. Weapons teams bring ordnance on loading carts. Air-to-air missiles are lifted onto the wingtip rails and locked into place. Guided bombs are mounted on the underwing pylons using hoists. Each weapon is connected to the aircraft's electronics. The wiring harness is plugged in, the data link confirmed, the arming pins inserted with red flags hanging from them. The pins stay in until the aircraft is ready to taxi. Every weapon gets a visual inspection after mounting. The team checks the mounting lugs, the release mechanism, and the alignment on the pylon. The process repeats for every fighter on the line. One aircraft after another goes through the same sequence: fuel, weapons, airframe, avionics, flight controls, engines. By the time the pilots arrive for their briefing, every jet on that ramp is fueled, armed, inspected, and cleared to fly.